Just concentrating, Strig. Just concentrating. Nice to have you aboard. Sitting here just by myself, and I was just thinking hard, so my brow was furrowed. Very funny. How are you doing today? Hope you're doing better. Yeah, it's a sticky wicket in D&D 5e. A lot more lot more powerful and weaker in the older versions. Now it's just cheap and easy, and it's kind of broken. That works pretty good. My players where they had the magic items, and they automatically said they should know everything about the magic items they have. You learn its properties and how to use them. What if the properties change over time or don't reveal certain conditions? The point of the spell identify is to, in meta play, when you're talking about Dungeons and Dragons level, if you're playing it by the Dungeons and Dragons rules, then all of the items that you're working with can be identified by an identify spell. It's only when you homebrew away from that that you have any reason to change otherwise. Because if you are giving them an item that fits the description of what is in the D&D materials, then the D&D materials will give you what the definition. I know it's a level 1. But what makes them think the item is magic? What are they using the spell for? Now, since it's level 1, they can do it all day long, and it doesn't expend the gold. It used to be each time you wanted to cast it, you would have to find a 100 gold piece value or higher pearl, and it would expend the pearl in the use of it. It is often paired with Detect Magic because Detect Magic is, again, a D&D mechanistic trope. It is what it is. So knowing that, it really is a matter of a decision of what you are wanting to play. If you are wanting to play Dungeons and Dragons as the rules are described, then you have no problem with that because you're hoping they will find the items, they will get the items, they will advance their character, and they will progress down the video game style trope that is Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. You want to make it as simple for players as possible because you want to bring in new players. That's what D&D's mechanism right now is. Well, what you can do when it comes to that is define the magic item, but you'd have to do so outside of D&D rules. And that is make the items have similar effects to what a player has, in that they only will trigger advancements when they receive those advancements. So, for example, if you have let's say you have a ring of flight, it will only activate if you have a dexterity better than 15. So if they have a dexterity of 14, it won't manifest as magical because it's not triggered. But once it triggers, then you can then identify. So exactly. And if you're up against rules gurus, you might want to think about why they're looking for a new game master. Because game masters are part of the problem. Because if a game master is not patsying to the D&D mechanism, if the game master is trying to create his own real material, then he's going to have to operate outside the parameters because these spells. Oh, that's fair. That's fair. But did you find D&D because of them? Because that may be the case. What I'm getting at is that they're glad to have you game master because they want to be able to use the rules. Okay. So I'm only talking out of my hat, and as you can see today, I'm not wearing my hat. My hats are up there. So I'm not talking out of my hat in this case. But I would have a conversation with them. I say, guys, I don't like the way D&D works. I don't like the reason, and then explain to them why. Because if this had been talked about at the very beginning, and you said, guys, no, okay, though both of them know the rules better than you do, then you guess what they say goes. No, what you have to do is go and actually start to play to their level, which means read the rules yourself so that you can defend them. And hinting at nothing ever works because a hint is only a hint for the person who's giving the hint. Everyone else, it's a riddle. I don't know. If you're, like I said, play to what they want when you're playing with them, and then play the way you want to play when you play. But just realize that leaning on them for rules, it should be, guys, you're the game masters. You know the game better than I am, literally. So I'll play in your world until I understand the rules better, and have one of them be the storyteller. Because I think, this is just my conjecture, that they are taking advantage of your goodwill and good nature by having you be the storyteller and then lording it over you when it comes to a rules situation and hammering it home. I don't know. I'm not at your table. So yeah. Well, that's the allure of Dungeons and Dragons. Again, one of the evolutionary steps as a game master is new day, new group. You want to try out different things with different players and develop understanding of the rules beyond what they have. So yeah, I'd be having him DM. The guy that's got the experience. If he's one of the guys that's giving you trouble, if he's the guy that giving you recommendations and helping bail you out or whatever, maybe not so much. But if it's a situation where he's one of the ones that's giving you grief, I would be just saying, hey guys, I'm feeling very incompetent as a game master, and because you guys know the rules better than I do. So it's either my rules or it's not. And if it's not me as a storyteller, it's the game by as the rules as written. That's not the way I want to play. And just well, sure, yes, okay. So this happened to me during the fourth iteration. It was the fourth cycle, so I had lots of experience by this point. I, you know, 4 times 7, I had 28 years of experience by playing by this point. But I had other players at the table who were rules lawyers, and by the third or fourth session, the people that came to play at the game that were not those two guys said, "We're going to call this the Rule and Scott show." That's the two guys, J.M. Albertson, who went by Rule, and a guy named Scott. And Rule and Scott ran the show. They told players what they could do. They made recommendations to players what skills they should use, what spells they should use. We're basically bullying the other players, and I, as a game master, wasn't doing anything to stop it. And when it finally the scuttlebutt guy came back around to me that it was becoming the Rules and Scott show, I had to pull those two guys aside and say, "Look, I want to run a story. You're fine to be a part of it, but you got other players that want to be a part of it, and I've got to be able to engage with them. So you either have to pipe down, take a step back, let the other players have as much input as you, or we're just not going to be able to continue this." And as it turned out, I lost Scott first. He took a third of my group with him when he went, and they started running a game on a different day because these were the guys that he'd already bullied. Two of them were his relatives, and the other was an in-law. So, well, stop DMing or just not DMing for them. I think you're enough of a storyteller, and now that you're starting to get a comprehension of what's possible, I think all you have to do is just say, "I'm a game master anywhere in the world," and give a date and a time, and you'll have players. That's I mean, every website out there has a looking for game master. So you should have no problem finding another group. Now, if you're wanting to play, if I recall correctly, you don't mind playing online, so that the world's your oyster. There, if you're a competent game master, you're going to draw people. I mean, now I'm doing it rather unconventionally because I'm wanting to play with viewers, and the viewers aren't used to that, so they're not showing up in droves. But furthermore, I'm confident that if your players were in my group, they'd have the same problem for a while until they understood the universe, understood the mechanism. So it's possible. Well, you were able to convey to me what you were trying to do the other day when we had that conversation about world building, and we worked on the cow conundrum. So, well, yep, there's this thing called the Player's Handbook, and go get it, grab it, and read it. Maybe even just take a hiatus. Tell the players, "Hey, look, I need to catch up. I'm going to take 3 months. I'm going to review my world mechanisms, and I'm going to read through the rule books, make sure I know what's going on, and then decide. Read the DM's guide, read the Player's Handbook, read the monster manual to a certain extent, so that you become familiar with the terminology and all of that. And from that, then you could actually become the storyteller from that aspect. You're not having to week over week try to plan things. Instead, you can take a couple of months to get your stuff together. So I've done that before. I've taken hiatuses. When I do, generally I come back and run 2 or 3 sessions a week to catch back up, but that's just me. So yeah, definitely get to know all the classes and everything. That works too. That's classic. Classic description. No, it's not too late now. Just literally put up a big timeout, guys. Timeout. I made a mistake. I made a mistake. And I need to clarify. I want to be a storyteller. I want to be a game master. I would like to be the one who makes these final decisions. I honor and respect the fact that you've got all this years of experience. I respect and honor your opinions. However, I interpret the spells differently than you do, and I might even be interpreting different from what the book says. But this is what I see happening in Magic, and in particular these rules that we've already talked about. And I need to, from this point forward, clarify that these are the rules I'm going to go with. Like them or don't like them, that's what I'm going to be choosing to do. If you have a problem with that, then we have a problem. But generally speaking, I need to be the one who's running the story because I'm the game master. And according to Rule 1 of Game Mastery, Game Master is always right. Game Master final arbiter. If you don't like that, then you can play at another table, or we can reconsider who's going to be the storyteller. But that's up to you, you know. To each his own. Did I get all the ships sunk? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I thought there was one more. There it is. Yeah, that's pretty common among most people. Most people don't like conflict, and to be a game master, you got to be able to resolve conflict. Whether that means being able to be confident to say something, or more importantly, that you're going to adhere to whichever rule you accept. Whether you say that, for example, identify, maybe in your game, at least for now, you have to play by the rule that they can identify everything. So don't spend any time creating magical items. Just use the ones in the book. And instead, come up with maybe specific triggers that an item isn't magical until it reaches a certain particular thing. That could be a separate rule that is outside of the D&D rules, and therefore you could have it as a homebrew rule and just say identify only works on items that have been identify only works on items that have been clearly recognized and identified as magical. And therefore, since my system uses a magical trigger mechanism, you won't know it until the item becomes trackable. And so you'll have to basically cast Detect Magic. Even on old items, you'll have to spend a lot of bookkeeping time, player-wise, going through their list of items every time they want to decide to stop and check it out. Maybe just homebrew the cost. Say, yes, you can have it only costs 100 gold piece gem, but you have to have a new one every turn, because that's the old rule. And that's just literally, you could you could pursue that from the angle of saying, oh, I looked into the older versions of the rule book, and the older rules book requirement was cool. I think we're going to do that, which is you have to have a different 100 gold piece pearl every time. So that means your group's going to have to stay near a coastline to get to where pearls are, because otherwise they'll run through all the pearls in an area. So then they won't be able to cast Identify anymore. And if they want to then say, well, we want to use the rule that says I can use my spell focus instead, you can say, nope, I'm not using that rule. You must use material components. And now you add a whole burden on the player that they are going to have to track material components for everything. It makes for a slower game, but it's a way of making sure that if they want to play by the rules, you're playing by the same rules, so to speak. It's all relative anyway. It doesn't matter. You can do it any which way you want. Sure. Or you could just go to search the web and find the right wording someplace else, copy paste. That would be cool. Nycos is so much easier to learn, and it gives you more open space, and gives them more creativity spaces for their advancement. It'd be so much easier. That's fine. I don't mind. You could be one of my guinea pigs resources, and since I'm getting my the reformatted book should be in my hands by the end of this week. I can review it and then get one ready to send to you. So that's a possibility. And it's arguably a lot easier to learn how to play and a lot less moving parts, and the players do their own advancement, so you don't have to worry about any of that. You don't have to worry about scaling or anything like that. So, sure. No, I get it. I get it. We could definitely do that. Like I said, we were talking about putting together a group. The Saturday thing didn't work out so well, but we can figure out a way to make it work. Sure. Oh well, confidence is always going to be. Even with my years and years and years of experience, I get the jitters. Matter of fact, I've got my kind of nightmare scenario is that I will start to explain something to somebody, I'll get confused, or I won't present it properly, and they'll all look at me like, "You think somebody else? If somebody else thinks this is fun?" So yeah. That's just the way of it. Yep, yep, exactly. There are trolls of every stripe, and if it's a new system, they can't possibly criticize because they don't know what's going on yet. Once they do, they will still they yep. But then again, we will have sold maybe 50 copies of the NycosRPG rules system by then too. So I'll be able to have FAQ questions answered for you. Plus, you can always pick my brain as you go along too. So. Actually, DMing for 5 people or DMing in front of a group of 500 is exactly the same. You just have to not be paying attention to your people that are watching. So, in other words, what I would do is do what you do for me, and that is get a mod, have a mod handle the rabble for you, and then after the game, maybe do a debrief where you talk to the viewers or whatever, if you want to, and if you don't want to, that's okay. You just have your mod take care of it. In my case, I wasn't actually visually running the streams at first, And then by the time I literally would tell the viewers, look, this is a live game. I'm running a session, so I'm not going to be paying attention to you in the comments, but I will respond to the comments after the game. Stay tuned until afterwards, and we'll get to those as quickly as I can. And generally, by the time I finished running the actual game, the players that had made the comments were long gone, and I didn't have any direct commentary. But sometimes you do. Yes, less rules, less to guru. Not only that, more understanding, because the mechanism is intentionally forgiving. It's left to the game master to do a lot of stuff. So there's not going to be somebody who's wanting to adjudicate the rules anyway, or try to tell you how to run your game, because they're going to be busy figuring out how they would run it for themselves. So, exactly right. Exactly. Anything they say is just feedback. No, ours is in 2024. So we got a year before we have elections. They'll start doing some spamming and stuff, but not yet. Pardon me. Ours is November 2024. Well, okay, so great comment about rules gurus and hating them. It's not that you don't have to like them. You just realize that, as you have already noted, with somebody like me who's got years and years and years of experience, we certainly have opinions on everything, right? So whatever you do as a storyteller, we're going to judge by a different set of parameters because we're judging with the rules by which we are familiar. And so, therefore, that's rather difficult. Sometimes, I need to look at the map again. Realize shouldn't be anything down here. Shouldn't be anything going that direction at all. There we go. That means I can put a sea monster in there. That's too many. That's the big one down here. That's what's up there. Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you. That's because like I said, as an improvisational game master with the rule of cool in place, am always going to be a yes and kind of guy because anything you want to try to adjudicate or try to rule on, I'm just going to talk you through it. We're going to talk about what it might be doing. So, and as far as the endangered species, what one man or 100 men or a nation can do is problematic. Matter of fact, well, there you go. Your comment right there about rule of cool. That's what you have to say to your players. Look, I'm using a rule of cool, and I think it's cool that magic is undetectable. Yes, you can use a detection magic when it's active, but until it's active, it's not considered a magic item. So that's your rule. And then when it activates for whatever specific level of magic they might be able to detect at that point. And anything that it might evolve into will only trigger later when it triggers, in which case they can do another identify later and see what it's become. So that's a way to get around your difficulty with the specifics of a magic item. But as far as the endangered birds, the main thing there is that there's a supply and demand. Somebody is wanting the birds for their nefarious reasons. Yeah, well, I can restate it. Yes, your magic on my world is, as of now, I'm invoking Rule of Cool, which is not rules as written. And if you are going to, as a person, argue that a rule should go a certain way, realize that I'm the final arbiter as game master. And I think that it'd be cool if magic worked this way. And so as of now, I'm invoking a house rule that says magic works this way, and that is that it is identifiable as a magic item only when the magic has actively triggered. That means it's after you have it depends on how you want to work the ruling about magic. There are D&D rules that have to do with an item being I think it's called attuned, ATTUNED. And so if the item hasn't attuned yet, it won't be detectable. Once it's attuned, then it can be detectable, but it will only provide you the information that I provide you. And then on top of that, if there is something that has a magical characteristic that is active right now, that may change over time, and so you'll have to periodically cast your identify to find out what it does now. Well, that's fine. Actually, that you don't have to do anything for that. That's actually in the rules. If a sword glows, it apparently has a magical characteristic. If you wanted to say there's something awesome about it, maybe you just feel weird in its presence. Maybe it makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck. Maybe as you reach for it, it says something in the old tongue, like in Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf goes to pick up the ring, he hears the dark voice of Sauron. You know, and so yeah, it's that's like I said. I just would invoke Rule of Cool. Say, I've read enough about Dungeons and Dragons to know that there's two schools of thought: Rule of Cool, rules as written. And you guys are really good at rules as written, but I want to invoke Rule of Cool, so magic's going to work this way, and then tell them what that rule is. And just say, and yes, it wasn't that way last week, and I said a different thing last week, but this is now the rule. I think your players will be fine with it. I don't think you can worry about it too much. Oh, sure. Write it down. If if you're worried about saying it, write it down. I would go ahead and say it. I say, guys, I'm going to read this to you, and I'm going to give you a copy. But I needed to write this down because I want to make sure I got it across to you, and I don't want to lose my nerve. Honest, Because the trick is that it has to be. They have to recognize that it's something that's heartfelt. That you're not just being flippant. Welcome, Viga Boffin. This is Jonathan Elbin and NycosRPG, and we are World Building Basics. And I'm building a map of the Outer Islands right now. And if you have any questions or commentary, feel free to add in. We're having a conversation about dealing with players. They're not troublesome players, but they're players that know the rules better than you do. And how do you handle that? And while we're doing that, I'm building the map of outer islands that are beyond the normal travel routes of the world of Nykos. Here in a minute, I'll reveal the big map and you can take a look at it. In the meantime, feel free to say anything you want, ask any questions you want, and I'll be glad to assist in any way I can. I've been a game master for 48 years. I learned from one of the guys that designed the game clear back in the 70s, and I've been game mastering nonstop for that entire time. Average of one game session a week for all of that period. And during COVID in particular, I was running 9 sessions a week. However you want to couch it, Strig, you can say it, point blank. You can say it. I've thought about it for a long time. You can say I'm concerned or confused or curious, whatever terminology you want to use. It's just whatever's going to make it easier for you to get through it so that your players are playing on the same level as you. Because when you are concerned with what they're doing, that's going to show through in your game. And every time you doubt yourself because of it, it's going to be a problem. So yeah, definitely. Yep, exactly. So me, the GM, so rules. Exactly. Right, and that's going to be the case with players playing under a new game master. Is they're all going to try to leverage the parts of the game they like in to make sure that it goes the way they want to. And sometimes they think they're being helpful, and sometimes they are. So all within a grain of salt. But if it's bugging you and giving you difficulty, then feel free to amplify that or adjust it. Hey, welcome back, Brewing. Nice to have you here. Yay! Glad to have you with us. Sorry, we're not talking about anything in particular. We've been having ongoing conversations. So if you get a chance to read through the uh, comments section there, the chat box, you'll be able to see a lot of what's going on. Yep. So once again, we're in the situation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I'm working on a map of the outer islands. This is southeast of Tenerife, in the Blackwater. It's going to be the first adventure that the players are going to take south of the northern continent that they're familiar with of Nikos. This is the first iteration in 3,000 years. No, 4,500 years. So past three iterations haven't had access to the stars, and so this will be the first adventure where the players are going to brave going into the Blackwater, being some of the first ones to attempt stellar navigation, traveling by the stars at night. It'll be fun, exciting. So I'm building up the story in my head about it, and as I'm doing so, I'm building out this map for the group of islands that are really the archipelago between the northern continent and the southern continent. So, but in the meantime, feel free to ask any questions. I'm not shy about answering them, as you probably already have figured out. And I'm getting better about answering the question that you ask instead of trying to interpret what you said. So it should be better as far as that's concerned as well. What a day, what a day. Sure. Writing a dream sequence players will have next session. Basically, they will have an apocalyptic dream that will show them what will happen if they fail. Okay, let's read the rest of that just a second. A battle between the gods is going to bring destruction to mortal realm. In the dream, they will see the people on the island they use as safe harbor to rest being slaughtered, and also their loved ones. Okay, so one of three ways can happen. Obvious one is that you just tell them that it's a dream. And which case then you tell them the actual details very clearly, very much pointing out anything you want to be stylized as clues included in the narrative. The second way is that you say, guys, I'm going to play through a vignette. I'd like to have you play this role, you play this role, you play this role, as people they know in town, as they experience the things that are in the dream, to the point where all of them are killed. Whether that be if it's a volcano or a terrible monster or a windstorm, whatever the thing is, make them make the saving throws, make them make the dodges, let them make the decisions for the characters within the parameters of that persona so that they're feeling it as if they are the player, and then you just murder them all. I mean, basically, they're all dead in the scene. And as soon as the last one of them dies completely, you say, that experience that you just had, you wake up in a cold sweat, and that's what your dream was. You felt as if you were that person. You saw the doom that came from something that's foreboding. Is there anything in the story so far that's foreboding? Or maybe you recall what it was that you gave them that was the actual clue, that gave them the warning, but you make them play through it so they feel it viscerally. And then the third way is the hardest, and that is you play through the entire scenario, including the destruction and the failure and all of that, and then say that all was a dream sequence. You gain the experience points, but none of you are dead, none of you are injured, none of you are blah blah blah. That's the strongest, but it's also the least satisfactory to a player, because a player wants to feel like everything's real because you're already putting them in a fantasy setting. So I think the second way is the optimal one. You just assign them, say, we're going to play through a vignette that's not you guys as characters, it's these other people that you know in town. And so have them play out the barber, the butcher, whatever, and then destroy the town with them in it. Play through it quick. Don't have to play through all the details. Tell them they're low level. Obviously, they're local folk. They're not fighters or warriors, so they can't do anything against it. There's nothing they can do to prevent it. They can't find the players. And in fact, maybe that's exactly the prophecy, is that they play through it as if the players were not there, suggestive that if the players don't do something, this is what will happen. But that's the easiest and most powerful way, is to have them play the vignette, play the scene out through as if the action was without the player input. Does that make sense? I mean, the player character input. The players are certainly inputting because they're experiencing it. But then just, when it's over and everything's dead and they're going, why did we do this? You say, well, you just now woke up in a cold sweat and that was the dream you had. Does that make sense? That's the easiest way. That's the strongest way to do it. Because if you just tell them it's a dream, most players in today's world, because they see their characters as toons, they don't see them as themselves, they don't see them as a role being played, they see themselves as something above the board, and therefore the character is nothing. They have a hard time recognizing the power of it. But if you drop them into it and make them play it out at that lower level, that visceral level, they'll feel it and experience it. So I hope that answers your question. That's what I would do. I've done it lots of times, and it's really funny the first time you do it, because the players don't even really understand. They're like, why did you kill off the entire village? Why did we have to watch an earthquake? Why did we have to fall into the lava pit? Whatever. Maybe it's Pompeii and the smoke and the ashes take them out quickly, and so they die, gratuitously fast because the volcano goes off because of some pleasures that they do. Yeah, it works for play. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But again, the reason why you want to use it as somebody that they've actually engaged with in the game instead of a relative is that a character in a game, if he's being played by a player who's playing the character as a toon, will not care. They won't give an S. They won't feel it at all. But if they've had dealings with the barmaid and they've had got flirtatious scenes that have gone on in the past and whatever, then the death becomes something meaningful to them because they are interacting with somebody they actually do know. Yeah, so prophecies are one of my favorites. I read oh gosh, it was a long time ago, but I read the works of Nostradamus, and I read Edgar Casey's book, and those are both prophets, right? They're both people who supposedly said stuff that would happen in the future. And the biggest glaring evidence that it's not quote real is that it's open ended and it could apply all the time to everything. And you can do that, verbally, prophetically. You can say something's going to happen, but it's so much more powerful when you give them something in game that they experience. That way, if you want to add to the ambiance of it at that moment, they flash back to that scene from this morning, and all of a sudden they see that kid that ran during the earlier session that ran for it and died. You could actually watch him go running by. That way, it brings back to home that this is real. Yeah, so good luck with that. I think that's a fun thing to do, and it is definitely different. I wouldn't pepper every adventure with that kind of thing, but one of the most powerful things, like for example, in Game of Thrones, was Brandon's visions. That every once in a while, Bran would have a vision that was stark and meant something, and then the rest of the time is just kind of visceral. I mean,